गुड मॉर्निंग, गुड आफ्टरनून, गुड इवनिंग। जिस समय भी आप हमारे इस चैनल को देख रहे हो, स्टूडेंट्स हैव demanded so frequently for this chapter of electrostatics that we have planned to start with the chapter of electrostatics. Electrostatics is a very important part of physics. So we'll first of all try to understand some basics in electrostatics. Electrostatics deals with static charges. The charges which are stationary on the surface and which are not moving. What are those static charges and what if the charges are moving? That moving charges contribute to electric current, whereas static charges will be remaining stationary on the surface. In the universe, we find that each and every object, if you talk about, is consisting of atoms or molecules. So, atom is consisting of a positively charged nucleus at the center and negatively charged electrons are revolving around it in the circular orbit. That is what the structure of atom we all have been speaking about. That positively charged atom has Z number of protons, which we call it as atomic number. So Z number of protons will be there inside the nucleus, whereas equal number of electrons are revolving around the nucleus. So these electrons, they are having negative charge on it and protons are having positive charge, whereas the positive charge of a proton as well as the negative charge of electron both have got equal magnitude, and it is 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19 coulomb. You all have to remember this number, this value of the charge of an electron, which is same as the charge on a single proton. So for a single given atom, you have got plus Ze charge on nucleus and minus Ze charge in the extranuclear part, so that on the whole the total charge becomes equal to 0 and atom becomes electrically neutral. Whereas if at all by any means there is an exchange of electrons, because as I know that nucleus is very strong and it will not share the protons, so there is only possibility of exchange of electrons. So by chance if an object loses electrons, so if objects are going to lose electrons, then the object will have less negative charges and the object will become positively charged. Whereas if the object is gaining electrons, then it will become negatively charged. So there is a very important thing that we all must understand, that an object becomes positively charged by losing electrons and object is going to become negatively charged by gaining electrons, such that the fundamental charge in the universe is going to be an electronic charge, the value of which is equal to 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19. And when I say that any object is charged, the charge that can be there residing on an object is always equal to n times of E, where n can take all integer values only, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and so on. You cannot have an exchange of 2.5 electrons, you cannot have an exchange of 7.8 electrons. Electron is a fundamental particle. You can either lose one electron, gain one electron, lose two electrons, gain two electrons. So the total charge that can always be there on an object is always equal to n times of E, and this particular thing is actually known as quantization of charges. Now what are the ways by which you can charge an object? The first thing is, it is possible for me to charge an object or to develop static charges on an object, first thing is by method of friction. That whenever I rub two objects against each other, some of the objects have tendency to gain electrons, some of the objects have tendency to lose electrons, and by this method of friction you can have the charges either gained or lose, I mean electrons either gained or lose, and the object becomes charged. We all must have seen that whenever we rub comb against our hairs, the comb can lift some very small pieces of papers, and that is by static electricity. Whenever in you can say in winter season we sit on plastic chairs, our hairs are, whenever there is a slight friction or whenever we use woolen clothes and we try to remove those clothes, we have those charges developed on our body and as well as on the woolen cloth, and you find that our hairs, body hairs, they are actually attracted by the cloth. The other method by which you can have charges, develop static charges, is by method of conduction. That whenever you connect an object to a battery, that same potential of battery terminal is there, so that object can be either positively charged or negatively charged by connecting to that particular respective battery terminal. And the third is by method of induction. Well, what I mean by method of induction is that supposing if I have let us say a metallic surface, metal object we are having, and I have a positively charged rod here. So this particular object is positively charged. So it will have charges all over the surface. All these are positively charged. These positive charges, they will try to attract electrons from this metal. So all these electrons, they will be gathered on this side. This was earlier electrically neutral. It means that whatever was the magnitude of, I mean whatever were the negative charges, same were positive charges. So automatically when this end becomes negatively charged, the other becomes positively charged. That is what is going to happen. Now I can connect this to ground 0 volt, so that these positive charges, they get grounded. Then I remove this and this object will then entirely become a negatively charged object. So this is by mere presence of the other object, this charged object has induced negative charges on the other object, and that is why this particular method, we all call it as the method of induction. So in this portion we have studied that the fundamental charge in the universe is electron. The charged object or the objects can be charged either by gaining or losing electrons, and the three different ways of how you can have the objects charged. Now we speak about certain properties of charges. One thing which we have already used was that charges can be added algebraically. When I say that charges are algebraically added, it means that if I have a charge of, its SI unit of course is coulomb, charge has got SI unit as coulomb, that if I have a charge of plus 2 microcoulomb, you have another charge of plus 3 microcoulomb, the total charge on this two objects will be equal to 2 plus 3, that is equal to 5. If I have further another charge of maybe minus 1 microcoulomb and the other is minus 2 microcoulomb, if I have all these four charges together added to a certain object or to a body, the total charge on the object will be 2 plus 3 plus of minus 1 plus of minus 2. So it's going to become 2 plus 3 plus of minus 1 plus of minus 2, and this will then become plus 2 minus 2, 3 minus 2 is 3 minus 1 is 2 microcoulomb will be the net charge on the object. So this is the additive property of charges. The charges can have the algebraic addition. The charges can always be in the quantized state is what is a very fundamental property of that. Then as we know, there are only two different types of charges in the universe, that is positive as well as negative. Now what further we know is that there is always a force of attraction between two unlike charges, and there is a force of repulsion between two like charges. It means there is a, you see, repulsion between positive positive or negative negative. There is an attraction type of a force between positive and a negative or negative and a positive. But this tells you what is the type of charge acting between the two charges. How much force is going to act on the given charge, that is given by a fundamental law, and that law is called, it's a very famous popular law, that is called Coulomb's law. As we all know, SI unit of charge is Coulomb. That's after the name of scientist Coulomb itself. Coulomb's law is going to tell you about how much force is going to act between the two charges. This law is very similar to that of your Newton's law of universal gravitation. Whereas Newton's law of universal gravitation is there only for the attraction between the 2 point masses. It is always a force of attraction that it speaks about. Whereas in case of charges, we have got a force of either attraction or repulsion. That law of Newton's law of universal gravitation is also an inverse square law, and even this Coulomb's law is also an inverse square law as well. Now, what is this law going to tell us? As I said, it's very similar to Newton's law of universal gravitation. Here we consider, or rather take into consideration, 2 point charges which are separated. One I would call it as Q1, the other I would call it as Q2. Even if I have taken into consideration both charges to be positive here in this case, it is not compulsory for me to consider them to be positive. It can be one positive, the other negative, both negative, anything is possible. Such that now there will be a force of repulsion between the two charges. This force of repulsion acting on Q2 is going to act towards your right hand side, and the force of repulsion acting on Q1 is going to act towards my left hand side. So this is how the forces are going to act. Further, what I find is that these two forces, the force acting on Q2 because of Q1, that is F2, 1, and force acting on the first charge because of second, that is F1, 2, they are both equal in magnitude and opposite in direction. So, first of all, let us just speak about what this is. These two charges, Q1 and Q2, are considered to be at distance r apart from each other. Then this law tells you that, or rather it states that the force of attraction or repulsion F between 2 point charges separated by distance r is directly proportional to product of magnitude of two charges. So F is directly proportional to Q1, Q2 and inversely proportional to square of distance between them. It is F is inversely proportional to r squared. So this is analytical expression. The law further states that this force of attraction or repulsion, this force is always going to act along the line joining two charges. As I can see it in this case, that Q1, Q2, whatever is the line joining these two charges, both the forces are acting along the same line. It is not that this force is acting somewhere here and this force is acting somewhere in this direction or in this direction. It is not like this. The force has to always act. If at all the force acting on Q2 is not along this line and is in some other direction, it means that there are some other charges present in the surrounding region which are influencing this charge Q2 to have a net force acting in some other direction. We will speak about the combination or the resultant of all such charges. Anyway, so here you find that F is directly proportional to Q1, Q2, inversely proportional to R squared. So I can combine these two equations and therefore I can say that F is directly proportional to Q1, Q2 divided by R squared. Whenever you have this kind of proportionality equation, you can write that therefore F is equal to some constant of proportionality multiplied by q1 q2 divided by r squared. Now this constant of proportionality which we have here, if at all the charges are either separated in air or separated in vacuum, this constant will be represented by this 1 upon 4 pi epsilon 0. This is force acting in air or force acting in vacuum, I would say. Where this entire term 1 upon 4 pi epsilon 0 was a constant of proportionality, out of which this epsilon 0 is known as permittivity of vacuum or free space or even air. By saying air, I don't mean that vacuum is same as air, but I mean to say that this value of epsilon 0 or this entire constant 1 upon 4 pi epsilon 0 is same for air, same for vacuum. That is what I mean to say. Whereas this entire constant term has this 1 upon 4 pi epsilon 0 has got a value equal to 9 into 10 raised to 9 so many SI units. The SI unit of this quantity is Newton meter square per coulomb square. We can make it out from here that this bracket is equal to F into R squared. So that F is in Newton. R squared, this quantity, R squared if it comes here, it's going to be in meter square divided by Q1, Q2. Those are charges that will be in coulomb square. So SI unit of this is quite obvious and it's supposed to be Newton meter square per coulomb square. Whereas if at all the charges, these two, they are not separated in air or vacuum, but they are separated by some other non-conducting medium, then in that case this equation for force, that F in medium I would call it as, that would be equal to, it is 1 upon 4 pi epsilon 0 k into q1 q2 divided by r squared. Many times this equation is also written as 1 upon 4 pi epsilon into q1 q2 divided by r squared. So I understand that this epsilon 0 k, this term is represented by epsilon. So where this epsilon is equal to epsilon 0 k, earlier my term epsilon 0 was called permittivity of vacuum or free space. This will be called as permittivity of that particular medium. So it is permittivity of that particular non-conducting medium, and this k, which is equal to epsilon divided by epsilon 0, is known as dielectric constant. Now because it is the ratio of two permittivities, permittivity of medium divided by permittivity of vacuum, it is also called as relative permittivity. So instead of this k, some people even write it as epsilon r, but most convenient way of writing it is 1 upon 4 pi epsilon 0, and that is how you can write it. That's about dielectric constant. What I actually understand here is that if I take ratio of these two equations, F in medium divided by F in air, if I find this, then I understand that F in medium divided by F in air, this F in medium is k times less. If you try to see that this entire term, if I observe this entire term 1 upon 4 pi epsilon 0 into q1 q2 upon r squared, this term was actually F in air, and therefore I find that F in medium is equal to F in medium is equal to F in air divided by k. So whenever we are solving problems and I have to calculate what is the force acting between two charges in certain medium, and by chance if we have calculated the force in air between the two charges, you just simply have to divide that by the dielectric constant. So F in air divided by that dielectric constant of the medium will tell you what is the force acting between those two charges in the medium. So this is about Coulomb's law that we all have studied today. In the next part of this, we will be talking about what are the electric field lines. We will also be initially speaking about linear charge density, surface charge density, volume charge density, superposition of forces, and thereafter we will go for electric field lines. Okay, thank you very much.